Hey everybody, it's Andy Hudson with Missouri Ice Hockey Officials Association, and I'm really excited. Got a little bit of a late start, but that's because Sjoukje and I were just visiting. Very excited to have Sjoukje Brown on with me. Sjoukje, how are you?
I am fantastic. So excited to be here. Hello.
Yeah, great to see you. Great to see
Thanks
you.
for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. The last time we saw each other was at a little restaurant in Madison, Wisconsin, and I was on my way to northern Wisconsin with my kids, and
Yes.
I bombarded your meeting, and unfortunately, I had already ordered dinner. Otherwise, I would have put it on your tab.
We would have asked you to put it on our tab. We wanted you to join us, but yeah, you're always welcome.
Awesome. So thanks for joining. As I was telling you, and I've told a lot of people, is this thing just kind of happened on a whim to, just kind of keep talking about hockey while we're all sitting here twiddling our thumbs and getting tired of our kids being around us all the time and not leaving the house for weeks. And oh my gosh, how are you handling all of this?
I'm okay. I'm an elementary school principal, so we're considered essential, and we're doing all of our distance learning and things like that right now. So I'm actually going into school every day. The first 4.5 weeks or so, my daughter would have to go with me. She's 4. And then I do have someone who is providing daycare for me now. They don't leave their home at all, or anything like that. So she's the only child that's there with them all day. And so I can at least go to work and get some things done there and then be a mom when I come home. So juggling is going okay.
Well, I bet being a high school principal, how long have you been a principal?
So this is my 7th year. I was a principal for 1 year, and then I was a high school teacher for 11 years. So lots of kids.
I bet, how are your students handling this, virtual learning? I've got teenagers, but you're elementary school, if I'm not mistaken. So how are your students handling this?
Good. At first we didn't have one-to-one technology. So the first hurdle we needed to kind of jump over was making sure that we could get Chromebooks in everybody's hands so that all of our students were able to participate. The second piece, because I'm in a district that has a very high percentage of low income students, was making sure that everybody had internet service, because a lot of families did not. And so our district right now is actually paying for about 900 families to have internet services so that kids can learn. The other piece is just keeping them engaged, and making sure that we're asking the question of, like, given the standards that we have, how can we create culturally relevant and equitable instruction that kids want to engage in so that they log in every day? Because it's not just about the work that they're doing, but it's about checking in with them daily and making sure that they're okay.
Yeah, my 2 teenagers have had it relatively easy. My wife is an educator. I don't know if you knew that. She's a assistant principal at a school for the deaf, and she's been having to work at home, and it's just crazy for her. But I'm sure everybody is on here to hear about our educational woes, right? I doubt it. So let's talk a little bit more. Yeah, right. Let's talk a little bit about you. Give us your back. A lot of us know your name, especially if we're in the Central District, and hopefully there's people watching that are from the Central District. A lot of us know your name, but they may never have seen you at the rink, or they may never have talked to you in person. So give us a little background of yourself. Maybe start off with what the heck is the name Sjoukje all about?
So my mom is from the Netherlands. My dad played professional hockey in the Netherlands just before, after he graduated from college, mid-1960s, and imported my mom. And so as soon as we were born, he was like, you're going to skate and you're going to like it. So my brothers and I skated. We played hockey. I also figure skated. And for about 10 years or so, I had kind of quit hockey and went the figure skating route, and was very competitive with it. I lived away from home, came home on the weekends, that sort of thing. And then in high school, I said, I really miss being involved in hockey on a regular basis. I want to get back into this as a sport. I really miss the camaraderie. Figure skating is such an individual sport. And my mom said, well, why don't you referee? You'd be really good at that. And so she signed me up for a seminar, and I had to go with my brother, and the rest is history. I love it. So
was your brother a referee then?
He was for about 3 or 4 years, and then he was a very serious player. My brother ended up playing in the USHL. He went to Ohio State, and then he played in the East Coast League for a few years too after that. And he was playing on 4 teams at the time, as well as officiating. And so he just kind of phased out of officiating. He also left to go to prep school and his junior year of high school. And so that's what cut his officiating career, kind of short. He did it all the way up through that point in time. But then because of leaving and going to Connecticut to play, he just didn't have time for it there. So.
Gotcha. So, so you started officiating at what age?
I was a junior in high school.
Junior high school. So you're probably 16
Yeah, so
years old.
16.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
great. That's when it seems like that's when a lot of kids start. I mean, we here at MIHOA, we have to be 14. But a lot start at 14 and 15. What I've found here, and maybe you can talk about this throughout the Central District, is we get them at 14 or 15. Then when they get to be like a junior and definitely a senior in high school, they get really busy. The young officials get really busy because they're playing, like you said, on maybe a high school team, on a club team, sometimes 3 different teams. And it's hard to find time. So do you have any suggestions on how to keep those like 16, 17, 18-year-olds engaged so that we get them when they're in their 20s?
Right. I think some of it is working with organizations so that scheduling is easy for them, that it's not such a big conflict. So looking at practice and game schedules, looking at, what does their homework schedule look like? And moving forward from this point in time, we don't know what that's going to look like as far as returning to school or online or whatever the case is. But I think the more that organizations can work together with officiating, and I mean, youth hockey organizations can work together with officiating organizations and try to make that scheduling easier for kids. I think that's where we get the numbers, but also keep the numbers. I think opportunities need to come up, things like tournament opportunities or showcase opportunities where they're really learning and really getting a huge positive result out of evaluations and things like that, and getting able to work some higher level games than they maybe typically would, with some great feedback that's constructive and that's helpful to them, will make them want to continue to, just like in school, when you have really good constructive feedback that helps you grow, you want to continue learning. It's the same thing in officiating, I think.
Absolutely. And maybe when you and I both started officiating, there wasn't as much hockey going on. It was rare for kids to play on more than one team. I know it was for me. Right. And so, I was a rink rat. You were probably a rink rat. And it was just getting more ice time. Now it seems like kids have so many opportunities to play. And it's going to be interesting to see what it looks like once we get out of this COVID-19 thing too. But
right.
Let's go back. Let's go back to a little bit about your career. We're kind of bouncing around, but that's okay. So talk about how it happened that you started working higher levels of hockey, especially it's my understanding that you were the first female official to work junior hockey in the US. So talk about your journey into that opportunity. So
my senior year of high school was my second year of officiating, and in between junior and senior year, I used to figure skate in Lake Placid in the summers. And so no different that summer, went to Lake Placid, and I was walking through the 1980 Olympic arena, going to the US arena, which is a practice rink on the backside. And I saw all these referees on the ice, and I thought, what are these guys doing out here? That was kind of funny. And I'm like, why would they be holding a seminar now? It's July. I didn't get it. So I went down, I was a little bit early, and I said now I know, it was Derek Martin, who's a local Illinois guy, worked a lot of pro hockey. And I went down and I said, what are you guys doing? And he said, oh, this is the Eastern Regional Officiating Camp for USA Hockey. These are the top, and I don't recall the number, but we'll just say, 24 or whatever it was. Officials in the Eastern region of the United States, and we're teaching them and molding them and trying to get them to do higher levels of hockey. And I said, wow, it sounds really cool. I ref. And he went, no, you don't. I said, no, I do. I just finished my level 1 year. I loved it. I did 87 games this year. I can't wait for my level 2 seminar coming up. I was all gung ho and excited. And I said, can I go on the ice with these guys? And he said, well, you have to ask Mark Rudolph that. Mark Rudolph was the director of the officiating program at the time. And I said, well, who's Mark Rudolph? I didn't know. And Mark was standing 5 feet away with a cup of coffee, on the ice. And Mark turned and said, why him? And I said, hey, can I skate with you guys? So he came over, we started talking, and it ended up that I ended up doing many of the on ice sessions and about one classroom session per day, because I still had my figure skating schedule to adhere to, but really kind of hanging out with the regional camp all week. And I learned so much, and I was just so excited that when I came back, I said to the schedulers I was working with, hey, here's what I got to do, and blah, blah, blah. And so the next year as a level 2, I worked probably close to 300 games. I started working for about 5 different schedulers in Illinois. And at that time it was, you know, they would pick up the phone call and say, I've got 5 games on Saturday. Can you do them all? You know, and you would just say, yeah, because you didn't want to turn anything down. So after a few years, I was, you know, everything happens at the bar, right? And so I'm at a bar. I had just turned 21, and I ran into an old and good friend at that time, Scott Brand, who said, and Scott was at that time the referee in chief of the USHL. And he said, hey, are you still reffing? And I said, I am, and I love it. And he goes, well, what are you working? I said, well, I'm working a lot of midget, a lot of high school, a lot of Bantam. He says, you're working high school games? And I go, yeah. He's like, I can't even work high school games in Illinois. That's a closed group. I said, well, I don't know. I lined about 27 games this year, and I'm really loving it. I'm learning, and I'm having a great time. Hopefully next year I'll get to referee a little bit. And he was joking around, I think. And he said, well, you should come work the USHL. And I go, okay. And he went, really? And I said, yeah, my brother's going to play there this year. He's going to be in Madison. And he just found that out a couple weeks ago. And I would totally love to work that league. What do I have to do? So he invited me to the Buck Bowl, which was kind of the preseason tournament, and went out there, worked a set of games throughout the weekend. And Scott said, you know, I think we can use you. I ended up working almost 20 games that first year, just, you know, traveling a weekend here, weekend there. There were 3 full-time referees in the league at that time. They were living in house together in Waterloo, and all of the linesmen were local. And, you know, the other referees that were working the league were local as well. And the following season, Scott brought in 3 guys, Rich Silva, Ian Walsh, and Dave Buchanan, to be the full-time referees, and then hired Todd Anderson and myself to be the first full-time linesmen that the USHL had. And we all moved to Waterloo. Very different than what it is now. You know, there weren't apartments all over the place and things like that. The guys lived in a house. The league and I talked about it. We weren't sure how appropriate it was for me to live in the house. We just didn't want, you know, you're talking about 1992 at this time. So for me, I didn't care because they were like my brothers, but the league said, we want we don't want the perception to be that we're sticking a girl in a house with 4 guys. So, you know, if word of that gets out, it's probably not good. So I lived in an apartment with the PR director's girlfriend. She was my roommate. And that was my first full-time year in the USHL, 1992.
That's awesome. That's a great story. And Mark Rudolph. So Rudy, right?
Yep, love him.
So I lived in Colorado. That's where I went to school, Colorado State, up in Fort Collins. And my Mark Rudolph story is a little different. I was working a game in Fort Collins, like a Bantam game. I was in college, and my partner, we did like a 3-set, and the bleachers were up, you know, they were kind of above the locker rooms. And during the middle part of the game, he said to me, as he was handing me the puck, he says, hey, look who just walked in. And I look up, and it's Mark Rudolph. And so, like, I knew who he was, national referee in chief, right? So, and I was kind of looking to maybe go somewhere with officiating, which I'm kind of glad I didn't in that. Well, I did a little bit, but anyway, no. But so I'm getting my stuff together. I'm hustling. I'm doing everything by the book. Well, he's goofing around. He's like throwing the puck to me. He's sitting on the boards, everything you shouldn't do. And I'm getting so frustrated with him. I'm like, this is our chance to show off.
Right.
So in between games, we're sitting in the dressing room, and here comes Mark Rudolph down, and my partner, Chris Davis, a guy who is not the Chris Davis you think of, it's a different Chris Davis from Michigan, goes, here he comes. And I'm like, you son of a gun, you know? And I look out, it's not him, but it's a spitting image of Mark Rudolph. Well, Chris knew it the whole time. Oh my God. And he gigged me for like 3 games.
Yes. Oh no.
So anyway, that was my Mark Rudolph story. But I'd run into him in Colorado Springs every once in a while. Great guy.
Love Mark.
So instrumental in getting USA Hockey, you know, the educational materials and all that. So
yeah, I mean, really, the whole education program he developed.
Yeah.
And then handed off, you know. But when I worked in the USHL the first year and the second year, Matt Leaf was actually a referee in that league, and there were several trips that Matt and I. My parents were very leery of me driving around by myself as a 21-year-old girl. You know, at the time, it was just kind of scary to drive interstate, and so they would drive me to Madison, and we meet in the parking lot of Hartmeyer Ice Arena, and they'd hand me off to Matt, and I'd say, you know, see you Monday, and we would work 3 games for the weekend or whatever. You know, the only Sunday games at that time were in St. Paul, so we'd do like a Friday, Saturday deal in 2 cities, sometimes 1 city, and then we'd work Sunday in St. Paul and head home.
Yeah, and these were all the 3 official system.
Correct.
So, and were you referee or linesman or both? Or
I was linesman.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then did you ever move into being a referee at some point, or?
Not in the USHL, but I did in the women's college. So when the WCHA first started the women's side of the program, I'd been an international linesman for women's hockey. I'd been a linesman in the CCHA and a linesman in the USHL. And when the WCHA started, he said, we really need some good female referees. We really want some female referees to kind of be out there. We want to increase the number of females we have officiating. There really aren't that many right now. So I know you're a good linesman, but I've also heard you're a good referee. I was refereeing here at home a lot in the 3-man system, or now the 3 official system. So I had done a ton of high school games and midget games in AAA and things like that in the 3 official system, but just not at a higher level. And so, but with, I think, you know, too, with games in the USHL and college games and working women's international hockey, you're exposed to so much and you learn so much that you kind of understand what's expected. You have good partners that you learn from. You have colleagues that you talk to about, oh, why'd you do this or why'd you do that? And so it's a learning curve. And so I was hired as a referee in the WCHA and the women's side, you know, right off the bat as soon as the first year of the league. So
yeah.
So then I would toggle back and forth, you know, with the things.
Yeah, different rule books, having to juggle all the different protocol and standards that different leagues have. Did you encounter any negative reaction, you know, based on you being a female in a male-dominated sport, especially when you were working games involving every single other participant, I assume, is a male, and you're the only female involved in the game from players and officials? But did you encounter anything like that, and how did you handle it?
Well, especially the first few years, there really weren't any other female officials in our state. And here I am, a 16, 17-year-old girl, and I'm out there officiating. But, you know, luckily I had schedulers who were cognizant of that and would schedule me to work with very good partners who were able to show me, like, okay, if this happens, then here's how we're going to react. And so my partners were intolerant of comments from coaches and players. I learned very quickly 2 things. Number 1, have a thick skin. You cannot let things get to you because they're trying to get to you. So if you allow it, they have won. Okay. And then the second piece is, ultimately, when you're the person with the whistle calling the penalties, you have the ultimate last say in the situation. So if you follow the right protocols, somebody's yelling at you, you skate away, they continue, you give them a warning, you skate away. You know, you never stand there and bait them or engage in a verbal conflict or whatever the case is. As long as you act appropriately and you follow the protocols and you're doing the things that we've been trained to do and you're consistent with it, it stops. And so, you know, there's always that testing of the waters initially. So every time I would move up a level, so to speak. So now I'm going to do high school games. Well, it's a bigger crowd. There's more people there. They're going, what? There's a girl out here. What's going on with that? You know, and I was only a year or 2 older than the players. You know, everybody tries to push, but you push back and you just ultimately just say, I'm the professional that's out here. I'm being paid to be out here, and I'm following the rules as they're written. I'm calling the game the way that I see it. I'm being fair and consistent. And if you have a question, I'm happy to answer it. I think it dies down pretty quickly.
Yeah.
HL, same thing. I would get comments from players, and sometimes we would joke around about things. I had a partner who told everybody, you better be nice to her because she's my wife. And so nobody said anything to me all night. I'm like, this is the most polite game ever. Like, these guys aren't swearing. They're not saying anything rude. Like, what's going on here? And he's like, oh, I told him you were my wife. And I'm like, what would you do that for? You know?
That's priceless. I love it.
Yeah.
But you didn't marry him, did you?
I did not. No.
Oh, okay. Good.
No, I did not. But, you know, it's one of those things where I think if you allow people to get to you, they will. And if they can see that they are not getting to you or that you're not going to let them, they stop because it's not fun anymore. And it's, you know, oh, okay.
Let's go back. So I want to emphasize and just piggyback on what you say about the importance of following the prescribed way of handling confrontation and how important that is as officials, because the complaints that we get when we're administrators, you know, whether you're a scheduler, a signer, or a tournament administrator, or referee in chief, are the officials that try to go rogue. They go on their own and they kind of make up their own rules, but the rules are there to protect us. And if we follow the protocol, then, you know, you can't be blamed. You know, if somebody climbs the ladder and ends up getting ejected, as long as you follow the steps that you should, we're gonna go to bat for you. What bothers me the most, Sjoukje, and it's different for different levels. Like at college, you can go right to a 10-minute misconduct on sportsmanlike behavior for players. But at youth hockey, you've got to start with that minor penalty, unless it specifically falls into where you go to that 10-minute misconduct. And a lot of people are so hesitant. They don't want to put the team down. Okay. But that more often than not stops the behavior. And the way I explain it is, if you go straight to a 10, then if they continue, you have to throw them out. If you started at that 2, you have that opportunity still to discipline using the 10, but you've painted yourself in the corner. And so I think I can't emphasize that enough. And I appreciate you saying that. I don't know if you have anything else to say about that, but that's just my point.
No, I think when you look at the way that kids learn and you look at effect size and what is going to have the greatest effect on them, you know, number one, it's going to be the coach's efficacy as a coach. Do they know the game? How well respected are they? What can they teach me as a coach to a player? The second largest effect size is their peer interaction. And if I'm constantly the guy that's putting the team down a man or down a girl, whatever, because I can't keep my mouth shut, I'm not going to have respect from my peers. And I think the effect size there is I start being, you know, shunned, or people don't want to play with me, or people don't want to socialize with me after a game, or whatever the case is. That's a pretty big piece when you're a developing kid. And so you curb your habits. You know, so if you have a coach that follows through and doesn't allow things like that, and you have peers that let you know, we're not going to tolerate being shorthanded all the time because you can't keep your mouth shut, you know, and you have officials who are following the prescribed protocols that are in place. As a player, you've got to learn. I can't keep doing that. Yeah, for sure. For those of you that are watching, it's Andy Hudson and Sjoukje Brown, Central District Referee in Chief, is with us. Probably should have been reintroducing, because people jump on and jump off on this. But anyway, sure.
Yeah. The good-looking person here is Sjoukje. The ugly bald guy is Andy.
I don't know about that.
So we talked about you as an official working a lot with, you know, teams that involve mostly boys or young men in some cases. What is your take on the growth of women's hockey right now and how it's exploding? How are we as officials associations going to keep up with getting more female officials involved?
You know, and that's the age-old question. We have been asking that as far as numbers of females. I think a few things come into play. And one is that there are so many opportunities for girls as players. They don't see those same opportunities in as much abundance as an official. And so oftentimes girls are asked to make a decision to either continue playing or to officiate, whereas it's much easier for guys to be able to do both. And so if I'm a player and I love the game of hockey and I got into officiating because I thought, well, this might be kind of cool and I'll make a few extra bucks and I'll get to spend a little more time on the ice. And this is a much better job than working at, McDonald's or a store or whatever. But I'm now asked to make a choice between playing, which is what I've been doing my whole life and I love, and officiating, which maybe I just started a year or two ago. I'm probably going to choose the playing side of it because I see more opportunity available to me in the long run. The other piece is making sure that we're really developing our female officials so that they're not getting thrown into situations before they're ready to, and making sure that if they are in a situation that might be a little bit more than what they're ready for, that they're working with extremely good partners who are there to help and to nurture along the way and not to criticize. I think that's tremendously important. And having coached girls for years and years and years, there is a different mentality. There's a different need for understanding why, not that boys don't want to know why, but there's a whole different mindset in approaching the sport. And hockey is something that you do additionally. For some girls, it's their entire life. For other girls, it's, oh, this is an extra thing that I can do. But if I have to choose between the two, I'm going to choose playing. As girls get older, and, I myself was confronted with this, do you have a family or officiate? Because, or is getting married going to get in the way of officiating, or having a life partner, or whatever that situation looks like for somebody? Very often the mentality is you could do this or that, not you can do both, like a man can do both. Now the mom.
Hey, it's like she appeared on cue. Like we were just talking about that.
Is she listening? Yeah, we have a new dog, so the dog took one of her stuffed animals. But
okay, well,
I think my big message to girls is you don't have to make that choice. You can do both. You just figure out a way. You sit down and you come up with a schedule and you come up with a list and you figure out a way to budget your time so that you can do both and you don't have to make that choice.
Yeah, for sure. And I've told a lot of people this in the past several years. I'm fortunate enough to work NCAA women's at the Lindenwood women's games just here in St. Louis. Mm-hmm. And they are the most enjoyable games. Just the whole atmosphere and the seriousness that they take the game, but the way that they position themselves on the ice, and there's contact, but they're not going for the big hit, and they're more or less respectful. Of course, there are going to be arguments, but women's and girls hockey, especially, at the middle to high level, is a really, really good brand of hockey. And I wish we could get more officials into it because, and everybody I talk to in the years I've officiated is the fraternity that we have, and fraternity is a male term. I shouldn't have said that, but the family that we have as officials, it really carries on through, being officials and versus being players. So one last question, and 30 minutes flies, doesn't it? Because we're almost at 5 minutes. Yeah, seriously. So I want to dive into our last topic because I know people who are going to watch this or will watch this later are curious. And we talked about this before we went live. What do you think the seminars are going to look like this upcoming season, and maybe even past that once we get back to playing hockey? What are some things that are going to look different? What can we expect as officials?
Well, there's a lot of ongoing discussion about that right now. So nothing's set in stone. We have had several conference calls. The district referees in chief have had some conference calls over the last couple of months. We do have our annual Congress coming up in the first week in June. Well, it's now 10 days in June. The virtual schedule, so it spans a much longer period of time. And that's one of the things that we're going to talk about. The referees in chief have been tasked with trying to find out, and for us, it's a little bit more difficult than it is for Massachusetts or Minnesota because we're a multiple state district. But what we've been tasked with finding out by the 24th of May is what is the current landscape in your district as far as the states that you're in. What are states allowing? What does the phase back to normal plan look like in the states that you have within your district? Do you think, what are the possibilities of having live seminars? I think I know that we're talking right now about a lot of different virtual platforms and what those learning platforms might be. We're talking about the potential for some non-skating seminars for veteran officials who've been around for a long time, to pull that component. Some of the discussion we're having is how much we have been feeling this social isolation and needing to get back to some sort of an in-person something or other to be able to connect with each other, to see each other again, to share those funny stories or drinking stories or, you know, whatever stories we have, to just how's the family, you know, that kind of stuff. But I also see people being fearful of situations like that because they may be in a risk group or they may live with someone who is an at-risk population and they're afraid of bringing something home to that person. We've talked about full cages on officials with some sort of an electronic whistle, you know, or something along those lines, because with a full cage, you can't, you know, or a bubble, I should say, you can't blow a whistle. So there's so much that we're talking about right now. I would expect that there'd be some sort of a hybrid platform between in-person and online, but we really don't know what that looks like yet. It'll probably be a while.
Okay. And if you're a MIHOA member that's watching, and I see Mike Horvath is tuning in from MIHOA. So Mike, good to have you here. Exactly. If you're a MIHOA member, we do have some of our seminar dates established already. We were going to have one in the last weekend of June, but we've already decided not to have that based on, you know, the health concerns. So August 8th, I think, is our first one. But we are, like Sjoukje said, locally, we're looking at options too for keeping people spread out. The seminar instructors have been tasked with, like, nothing's a bad idea for keeping attendees engaged, but with their health and safety top of mind. So for those of you that are watching locally, know that we're working on it. We're not just resting on our laurels and waiting for stuff. We will get this thing back and going. So okay, so yeah, 30 minutes flies when we do these things. Every time I talk to somebody, they're like, 30 minutes? That felt like 5 minutes. So, but we want to be respectful of people's times. We know that probably people have families and maybe they need to go sit on their porch with their spouse or their partner before they have dinner on this lovely day.
You know, is it raining there? It's raining here.
Yeah, it's just kind of cloudy, but not raining. But well, we didn't talk about everything we want to talk about, Sjoukje, but I really enjoyed it.
I did too. And, you know, I do want to throw out there my email, my hockey email is centraldistrictric@gmail. I get that on my phone. I'm typically very responsive. You know, now that it's on my phone, I had to figure out how to get a second email on there, but I got it.
Yeah.
So typically responsive as far as I would love feedback or questions from members about seminars, about anything that you have suggestions about, development programs, whatever the case is. We are here to serve you and accommodate your needs and try to figure out the best way to do that. And if I don't know what those things are, I can't represent that at the national level. So if there's anything, please don't hesitate.
That's great. Now your email is going to get blown up now with all these people.
That's okay.
And they're all going to say, when are we going to play hockey again?
I know. And I'm going to say, I'm going to punt on that.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much. Let's do this again sometime, maybe after we get the season started. I plan on doing these. Oh, hey, there's your daughter.
Yeah, do you want to say hi real quick? No? Are you shy?
Okay.
All of a sudden she's shy.
All right, no problem. There she is. Well, thank you so much. Thanks again, and thanks everybody for watching. We'll be tuning in this season with you know, what the heck we're going to do next with this lovely hockey season of ours, and we're doing this every week. So we got some really cool guests coming up, Sjoukje. We've got Andy Bethman, who is an official here in St. Louis. He does college hockey, and he went through the whole program. He works college hockey right now in USHL and ECHL. We've got one of our campers from last year, Josh Horowitz, who's a freshman at Indiana University right now. Great kid. Talks a lot, so he's gonna be perfect on this. Then after that, I don't know if you saw this, Jay Scherers, retired NHL linesman, who's like one of my favorite linesmen, if not my favorite linesman ever. Is going to come on. And so we're going to keep doing this and just keep talking hockey. And
So cool.
Hopefully you'll tune in and maybe we'll have you back as a guest.
I would love to, and I really appreciate being here today. So thank you so much.
All right.
Like I said, feel free to reach out anytime. I'm always here.
Okay. Well, have a great season. We'll be hearing more from you, and to everybody watching, stay safe. All right. See you, Sjoukje.
Yes. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.